It was meant to be a routine afternoon. But when a royal nanny refused to offer the traditional curtsy or even a polite nod to Princess Catherine, the reaction inside the palace wasn't just shock, it was outrage. Within hours, a quiet but brutal dismissal order had been whispered by Princess Anne herself. Why would the no-nonsense princess take such decisive action? The answer, it seems, goes far beyond protocol. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. No one expected what happened next. It was a crisp afternoon inside the Windsor corridors, the kind of day where royal routines unfold with silent precision. Footmen moved quietly, aides whispered along the walls, and protocol reigned like an invisible monarch. Then it happened. As Catherine, the Princess of Wales, made her way down the hallway, a figure stepped aside without a word, without a nod, without the customary dip of the head. The gesture that should have been instinctive was withheld. A moment passed. A beat skipped. Staff froze. For those who witnessed it, it was more than disrespect. It was defiance. You could feel the tension in the air, whispered one footman later. And in the palace, tension like that doesn't fade. It multiplies. Behind closed doors, conversations turned sharp. The woman in question, a nanny of nearly 15 years in the royal household, had always kept her distance from Catherine. She had survived the reign of 3 generations, known for her quiet discretion and unshakable professionalism. But to the senior royals, her refusal to salute wasn't an oversight, it was a statement. Within the hour, word reached Princess Anne. And Anne did not hesitate. No meetings, no debates, just a direct order. Dismiss her, effective immediately. Cold, swift, final. That was Anne's way. That has always been Anne's way. To the outside world, this might seem trivial, a curtsy missed, a moment ignored. But within the palace, protocol isn't just etiquette. It's hierarchy. It's loyalty. It's survival. And Anne, the woman who was raised in the iron shadow of Queen Elizabeth II, knew that once such defiance is allowed to fester, it grows into something far more dangerous. Saluting isn't about admiration, it's about recognition of role, duty, and power. By refusing to salute Catherine, the nanny had rejected the structure the firm fights so hard to maintain. She had thrown down a quiet but unmistakable gauntlet. And in Anne's eyes, that was war. There's another layer to this one, far more personal. Because this wasn't just any nanny. This was a woman trusted to care for the children of royals, a silent witness to the most private corners of monarchy. Her dismissal wasn't just a staffing decision. It was a message, a warning. The shift was instant. Staff grew wary, glances became cautious, and whispers in the halls turned quieter still. If Anne could remove someone with such seniority, no one was safe. Panic doesn't announce itself in the palace. It spreads like perfume, silent, invisible, and suffocating. And within hours of the dismissal, a strange stillness took hold. Anne didn't speak publicly. She didn't need to. Her decision echoed louder than any press statement. But what made Princess Anne, known for her stoic discipline and loyalty to duty, intervene so personally? The answer traces back to a decades-old code forged in fire and betrayal. To understand Anne's fury, you must understand her law. In a family where power often hides behind polite smiles, Anne has always ruled by one principle: respect earned is respect enforced. And, in her eyes, Catherine had earned it. To violate that code was to violate Anne herself. Anne was never one for games. While others in the royal family danced through ceremonies and smiled for cameras, she was raised in the shadow of regiments and riding crops. Her childhood wasn't cushioned by luxury, but shaped by command. From the moment she could walk, Anne was expected to stand straight, speak with precision, and never show weakness. Her father taught her discipline. Her mother taught her duty. Together, they created a woman who measured the world not by charm or theatrics, but by honor and hierarchy. For Anne, the rules weren't suggestions, they were sacred. And in a palace teeming with silent battles and shifting loyalties, her adherence to that moral code made her both feared and revered. When Queen Elizabeth passed, Anne's grief ran deeper than most realized. It wasn't just the loss of a mother, it was the loss of the last great standard-bearer of monarchy. The Queen had been the axis on which the family spun, the keeper of traditions, and the shield against the storm. In her final days, there had been a quiet conversation, just the two of them. A conversation Anne never spoke of but never forgot. A promise made not in public, but in principle, to protect the dignity of the crown, to safeguard its future. And in that moment, Anne took the weight of legacy on her own shoulders. That legacy, to her, included Catherine. The younger woman had not come from blue blood. She had not been trained in palace etiquette since birth. And yet, over the years, Catherine had shown something rare: endurance. Through whispers, scandals, and icy receptions from traditionalists, she had held her head high. She had endured the comparisons, the scrutiny, the cold silences from corridors that still favored pedigree over presence. Anne had watched from afar, at first unimpressed, but then something shifted. A diplomatic mission nearly derailed by an unprepared courtier. Catherine stepped in, took control, salvaged the moment. And Anne saw something not often found in this family: quiet power, earned power. Since that day, Anne had observed with silent intensity. And what she saw hardened her resolve. Catherine didn't demand respect. She earned it. Through consistency, restraint, and, an unwavering sense of purpose. But not everyone agreed. Among the older staff, those who still believed in a hierarchy frozen in time, there were murmurs. Catherine, they said, was too polished, too careful. Some even whispered that she lacked the bloodline to command true reverence. These sentiments didn't just offend Anne, they infuriated her. When the nanny chose defiance, it was more than a gesture. It was the culmination of a pattern. A rising discomfort within the palace that questioned the very woman Anne had chosen to protect. And for a woman who had sacrificed everything for the crown, her privacy, her comfort, even her youth, such insolence was intolerable. Anne had not just dismissed the nanny, she had drawn a line etched in legacy, loyalty, and law. Yet behind Anne's unshakable loyalty lay a tangled history, one where Catherine herself had once stood on shaky ground. Before she was the poised Princess of Wales, Catherine was the outsider, a commoner mocked in hushed tones, a woman who had to smile through every snub. And it was Anne who watched from the shadows, measuring her. What Catherine endured left scars and forged unlikely allegiances. The corridors of the palace were never warm to outsiders. They were cloaked in tradition, guarded by centuries of entitlement, and protected by those who believed bloodlines were destiny. When Catherine first stepped into this world, she was not met with celebration. She was tolerated. To some, she was a social climber with a pretty smile. To others, a temporary guest who didn't belong. There were no open insults, no public slights, but the silence spoke volumes. Whispers filled the air behind her back. Second glances followed her every step, and invitations to the most private royal functions always arrived a day too late. In the firm, cruelty isn't loud, it's quiet, surgical. And Catherine learned quickly that survival would require more than charm, it would require endurance. From the very beginning, the old guard made their position clear. Certain senior staff refused to share information with her team. Others openly questioned her presence at state events. One senior aide once remarked that she hasn't earned the weight of the crown. Every movement, every gesture, every misstep was dissected. Catherine's smile became her shield, her silence, her strategy. But behind that calm exterior was a woman who was learning how to navigate a palace that didn't want to make space for her. And at the edge of it all stood Anne, watching, not helping, not interfering, simply observing with the sharp eyes of someone who had seen countless faces rise and fall. Anne had her doubts. She had seen many attempt to enter the royal fold through charm and stumble under its weight. To her, Catherine seemed too polished, too rehearsed, too eager to please. But then came the incident. A foreign delegation arrived, and due to a last-minute miscommunication, a diplomatic blunder unfolded in real time. Staff panicked. Officials scrambled. Catherine, sensing the moment unraveling, stepped in. Calm, clear, precise, She made the introductions, steered the conversations, corrected the protocol error without making anyone lose face, and salvaged what could have been a disaster. Anne watched the entire scene unfold from the sidelines. That moment didn't just change Catherine's standing in the eyes of the guests. It changed her standing in Anne's. Respect, for Anne, could never be inherited. It had to be earned. And Catherine had earned it not through ceremony, but through composure. That day marked a shift. Not in public displays, not in flashy announcements, but in something far more powerful: recognition. Anne began defending her in private meetings. She challenged dismissive remarks from staff. She corrected tone where it faltered. Quietly, but unmistakably, Anne had chosen her side. But not everyone agreed. Within the palace, a silent fracture was growing. There were those who believed Catherine represented a new era. Modern, graceful, resilient. But others, especially those rooted in the Queen's generation, still clung to hierarchy. To them, Catherine was an invader, a reminder that the monarchy was changing and not in a direction they could control. That quiet resentment didn't fade, it fermented, and while Catherine focused on fulfilling her duties with precision and grace, others were keeping score. But if Catherine had earned her place, there were still those who refused to accept it, and one of them had watched her rise with growing disdain. She'd cared for royal children, whispered lullabies to future kings, and attended state dinners without ever being seen. But behind the nanny's soft-spoken exterior was a fierce loyalty not to Catherine, but to another woman entirely. And that hidden allegiance would be her undoing. For over a decade, she moved like a shadow through the palace present, essential, but never intrusive. She had wiped tears behind closed nursery doors, stood guard during tantrums and illnesses, and knew every corridor better than most footmen. To the outside world, she was invisible. But within the royal inner circles, she was considered untouchable, a trusted figure, a quiet force. Few questioned her authority when it came to the children, and fewer still dared challenge her opinions until the balance of power began to shift. Her loyalty had never been a secret to those who paid attention. Long before Catherine cemented her place in the firm, this nanny had already aligned herself with Camilla. Not formally, not through declarations, but through 1,000 subtle cues. The private teas attended only by Camilla's aides, the way she deferred to Camilla's household over protocol matters. The moments she would subtly undercut Catherine's influence with a raised brow or a quiet correction. She had been in Camilla's orbit since the early days, long enough to consider herself part of the Queen's trusted enclave. So when Queen Elizabeth passed and Catherine's position began to solidify, something shifted in her. Not just discomfort, resistance. Post-Elizabeth, the monarchy entered a transition. New faces were rising, dynamics realigning. Catherine's role evolved quickly, and with it came influence. She wasn't just the wife of the future king anymore. She was the beating heart of a modern monarchy. But for the nanny, that ascendancy wasn't welcome, it was threatening. There were reports, quiet ones at first, of strange absences. A last-minute cancellation of a scheduled meeting with Catherine's staff. A forgotten outfit for a public engagement. Chilly nods in corridors. An assistant once caught her rolling her eyes behind Catherine's back. It was all too minor to discipline, too indirect to document. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a message. Insiders began to notice the widening gulf between the two women's camps. Catherine's team, newly empowered, increasingly found themselves stonewalled by those still clinging to the past. And at the center of that friction was the nanny. It was whispered in staff quarters that she believed Camilla, regardless of title, was the true Queen of Hearts. That Catherine's composure was a performance, that her rise was orchestrated, not earned. In her eyes, the wrong woman was being celebrated, and she wasn't going to pretend otherwise. The refusal to salute wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. A quiet protest, but a clear one. A final gesture of allegiance to Camilla and an open rejection of Catherine's authority. But what she didn't expect, what she underestimated, was Princess Anne. Because Anne didn't care for games or politics, she cared about order. She cared about discipline. And when she saw the lines being crossed, she didn't hesitate to act. The dismissal wasn't just about the missed salute. It was the culmination of years of covert resistance finally brought to light. Anne knew loyalty when she saw it, and betrayal when she felt it. But even she didn't expect what the nanny would reveal during her final confrontation. It was supposed to be a quiet dismissal, but instead, the nanny demanded an audience, and Anne agreed. What happened behind those closed doors has been buried in palace silence ever since. Dignified. The kind of exit that would be recorded in a single line of HR documentation, no scandal, no spectacle. But she wasn't ready to disappear. For the first time in her royal career, she stepped beyond the walls of protocol and asked for something extraordinary, a private audience with Princess Anne. Not to plead, to explain, to justify, to challenge, and perhaps to wound. The request sent ripples through the palace, but Anne, in an uncharacteristic move, accepted, whether out of curiosity, principle, or sheer fury. No one could say. The meeting took place at Kensington Palace, far from the public eye, but close enough to the heart of power that every word would echo. What was meant to be a short conversation stretched longer, and staff positioned outside reported raised voices behind the doors. The nanny, normally composed and calculated, was unrecognizable, emotional, raw, defiant. She didn't apologize. She didn't back down. Instead, she argued her case with unnerving conviction. "She has not earned it," she said. "Not from me." Those 5 words shattered any remaining hope of mercy. To Anne, they weren't just disrespectful. They were heresy. Anne listened in silence, her jaw clenched, her eyes cold. And then she exploded. "You dishonor this family," she snapped. "You confuse proximity with power. You forget who we are." It was a moment so charged, so volatile, that even seasoned staff who had weathered royal tempers before described the atmosphere as electric. This wasn't just about Catherine. This was about Anne's code being violated, her authority being questioned, her family, however fractured, being undermined. And that, above all, was unacceptable. Anne didn't give her a chance to respond. She issued one final decree: never return. Not to a royal residence, not to a public function, not even as a guest. Her name would be quietly removed from all future rosters. Her access revoked, her history erased from internal memory. And just like that, the conversation was over. No press statement, no formal notice, just a firm handshake to palace security, and silence. As the nanny walked out through the private exit, staff turned away. There were no goodbyes, no last glances. She was gone, but the tension she left behind remained. Every corridor she had once walked now felt colder. Every whisper became a risk. Her exit didn't bring peace. It brought paranoia. Because if a woman so embedded in the royal machine could fall so quickly, what did that mean for the rest? But even as the gates closed behind her, the consequences of that confrontation would ripple far beyond her exit. You would think one dismissal would settle the matter. It didn't. Instead, it split the palace in two, those who stood behind Catherine and those who quietly questioned her ascension. The walls of Windsor were no longer just home. They were a battlefield. The nanny was gone, but the unease she left behind only deepened. Her departure became a silent catalyst, forcing every member of the royal household to pick a side, even if they didn't realize they were doing it. The whispers grew sharper, the glances colder. There was no official memo, no open conflict, but everyone felt it. You were either with Catherine or you weren't. In staff lounges, hushed voices circled the same question. Had Princess Anne overstepped, or had she simply protected the crown? Behind the scenes, senior aides began conducting quiet loyalty reviews, combing through years of tete-a-tete, internal files. Who had been most closely aligned with the former nanny? Who had recently voiced hesitation about Catherine's leadership? Old staff records, previously untouched, were reopened. The term restructure became the word of the hour. Nothing was said outright, but the meaning was unmistakable. there would be consequences for doubt. Tensions surged between two invisible camps. On one side stood Camilla-aligned personnel, those who had served her since before the crown, who remained loyal to the old rhythm of power. On the other, the newly dubbed Catherine Guard, young, forward-thinking, fiercely loyal aides who saw the future queen not as a placeholder, but as the monarchy's last chance at reinvention. The two groups didn't argue openly, but their conflict was written into every delay, every avoided conversation, every denied request. Collaboration fractured, trust dissolved. It began with reassignments, quiet, unexplained. One aide was moved from Catherine's team to an obscure cultural office. Another was suddenly placed on extended leave. Emergency HR briefings followed. Staff meetings doubled. An air of paranoia settled like fog across the palace grounds. No one was sure what was being tracked, but everyone knew someone was watching. Even William, ever cautious with palace politics, was said to have backed Anne's decision privately. But in public, he offered no statement. No nod. No defense. Silence became his protection and Catherine's burden. She walked the halls with grace, but she knew the loyalty around her was brittle, conditional, watching, waiting. Then, a new protocol surfaced, unofficial, but ruthlessly enforced. All staff, regardless of rank, were now required to salute the senior royals in line to the throne. No exceptions, no compromises. What had once been a gesture of tradition became a test of allegiance. To hesitate was to be noticed, to refuse was to be replaced. A new order was quietly asserting itself, but not everyone was willing to fall in line. And as tensions flared, someone quietly reached out to the press, threatening to make the nanny's side of the story public. One email. That's all it took. An anonymous tip to a royal correspondent set off a media chain reaction, and suddenly, the story was out. But the real danger wasn't the story itself. It was what the nanny threatened to reveal next. The message arrived in the early hours, buried in the cluttered inbox of a senior royal reporter. No subject line, no signature, just one chilling sentence. Ask why the nanny was dismissed. Start with who she refused to salute. Attached was a redacted internal memo confirming her removal, stamped with urgency and labelled Internal Review, Immediate Action. Within minutes, phones were ringing across newsrooms. Within hours, headlines exploded. And by nightfall, the internet had a name for the scandal: Number Nannygate. The coverage was relentless. Talk shows speculated on what really happened. Blogs dissected body language from past royal engagements. TikTok theorists claimed they'd predicted it all. But what rattled the palace wasn't the noise. It was the line buried in the second wave of leaks. Catherine is feared, not respected. It wasn't just criticism, it was character assassination, and it came with just enough ambiguity to feel real. Inside Kensington Palace, Catherine and William's media team moved into crisis mode. They worked around the clock, crafting statements that never got published, fearing anything official would only add fuel. The press office debated a soft interview, a strategic public appearance, a charity engagement. But Catherine refused to manufacture sentiment. She had built her reputation on grace under fire, and she would not falter now. Still, the silence felt dangerous. The more she withheld, the more others spoke for her. Anne, on the other hand, refused to acknowledge the storm entirely. When asked for comment, her office issued just 2 words. No response, no clarification, no correction. Her silence wasn't indifference. It was strategy. She understood what few others did. Engaging with chaos only feeds it. And Anne had no intention of feeding anyone. But the nanny had help now. A lawyer. And with that, a platform. Though she didn't appear publicly, her representative issued a carefully worded statement. Our client endured a pattern of mistreatment over several years. She acted with integrity and professionalism in the face of shifting internal dynamics. It didn't name names. It didn't need to. The insinuation was louder than any accusation. As the pressure mounted, Buckingham Palace released its own statement. Measured. We thank all staff for their continued service and discretion. Internal matters remain confidential. It was meant to quiet the storm. Instead, it ignited new speculation. Why weren't they denying it outright? Was there more beneath the surface? And while William kept a dignified silence, and Catherine maintained composure in public appearances, the perception of fracture had already settled into public consciousness. The monarchy looked unstable, divided, vulnerable, and for the firm, that is the most dangerous narrative of all. But as headlines swirled and public pressure grew, Anne made one final move that stunned even her closest advisors. No press conference. No rebuttal. Just one line added to the official palace roster. Nanny role reassigned indefinitely. But behind those words was a powerful message. Anne had drawn a line and dared anyone to cross it. It was a response only Anne could orchestrate, sharp, surgical, and utterly devoid of noise. While the press braced for damage control, and insiders speculated over who would take the fall, she acted not with words, but with structure. Within days, a quiet internal memo was circulated through royal administrative channels, an immediate review of all childcare roles across the royal estates. It was described as a comprehensive reassessment of duty alignment, but everyone knew what it really was: Anne's purge. This wasn't just about one nanny. This was about loyalty, obedience, and preserving the sanctity of hierarchy. No exceptions, no negotiations. 3 staff members were quietly removed from their posts. No public explanation. No farewell ceremonies. Their access was revoked, duties transferred, files sealed. Some of them hadn't even spoken against Catherine, but that didn't matter. Anne wasn't interested in intent. She was interested in control. And in her view, even silent resistance was a risk the monarchy could no longer afford. In their place came a new guard, young, unassuming, and utterly loyal. Carefully selected by a hand-picked panel of senior aides close to both Anne and William, these new hires represented a break from tradition. They weren't from royal households. They weren't legacies. They were professionals, trained in discretion, obedience, and above all, alignment. For the first time in decades, the inner household shifted not by blood or status, but by allegiance to the future queen. Behind the scenes, the palace HR department was handed an unprecedented directive. Conduct loyalty audits, review communications, reassess interpersonal evaluations. It wasn't officially called a purge, but it felt like one. Morale tightened, routines changed, and fear settled into every hallway. The old guard, those loyal to Camilla or to the previous regime, became quieter, more cautious. But silence, in this new era, wasn't safety, it was suspicion. And still, Camilla said nothing. Her team offered no comments, no counteractions. But in the background, tension pulsed like a quiet drum. Meetings became more calculated. Eye contact between departments grew strained. The rift wasn't spoken aloud, but it was felt everywhere. It was Anne's palace now, at least in spirit, and Catherine's reign, though unofficial, had begun to take form. She was no longer the newcomer, the outsider, the one being measured. She was the standard, and everything else was being redefined around her. And yet, as one chapter ends, another quietly begins. Because someone isn't done fighting back. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't make a statement. But Queen Camilla doesn't need to. While Anne was dismissing staff, Camilla was building alliances and preparing for a subtle war of influence that could reshape the monarchy once again. While the palace reeled from Anne's crackdown, Camilla's response wasn't to retaliate, it was to reposition. She moved quietly, deliberately, choosing shadows over speeches and strategy over confrontation. In the weeks following the scandal, her schedule began to change. Private meetings with King Charles grew more frequent. Officials noticed it, aides whispered about it, but no one dared ask why. Because Camilla didn't demand power, she aligned with it. She whispered in the right ears, raised concerns masked as suggestions, and reminded her husband of the importance of experience over appearance, of loyalty earned over loyalty installed. And Charles listened, as he always had. Then, her lady-in-waiting returned. A woman long thought to have stepped back from the spotlight, now seen once again at Camilla's side during major engagements. It wasn't just a staffing decision, it was a message. A reminder that Camilla still had her court, still had her loyalists. Her presence was no accident. She represented continuity, stability, and most importantly, defiance without declaration. She stood beside Camilla like a chess piece, placed deliberately on a board others thought was cleared. Meanwhile, William found himself trapped between two women wielding power in entirely different ways. His loyalty to Catherine was unwavering, but his relationship with his father, already fraught with unspoken tension, began to show cracks. Private conversations between William and Charles became shorter, more cautious. What once had been casual strategy sessions now carried a stiffness that couldn't be ignored. There was no shouting, no confrontations, but something vital had shifted. The distance was emotional and growing. Charles, for his part, chose diplomacy. He did not interfere in Anne's restructuring, nor did he support Camilla's implied moves. Instead, he spoke of staff harmony and the importance of not allowing internal matters to distract from public duties. But those who knew him best understood what he was really doing, avoiding conflict by refusing to choose sides. His neutrality, however, was not neutrality in the eyes of others. To Anne, it looked like silence in the face of dissent. To Camilla, it looked like permission. Speculation began to swirl. Was Camilla preparing to expand her ceremonial authority? Would she step further into public royal duties? There were rumors that she had requested more visibility in state planning. Some insiders claimed she had asked for control over certain patronages previously expected to go to Catherine. Nothing confirmed, nothing denied. That was her brilliance. She didn't need declarations. She let speculation work for her. And through it all, a coldness settled between Camilla and Anne. They no longer shared pleasantries. They no longer coordinated appearances. They didn't need to argue. Their silence was louder than any spoken feud. Two women, two visions, one monarchy. And so the palace remains silent, but the tension is louder than ever. One salute may have been refused, but the war over who truly commands respect in the royal family has only just begun. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.